Welcome to the Cincy Postcast presented by Gold Star, your winning team off the pitch. I'm Kevin Wallace, and before we get into today's episode, I do want to tell you about our friends over at Streetside Brewery. Please go check these guys out, located over the east side of Cincinnati, the Columbia-Tusculum neighborhood. They have a lovely, lovely setup over there that is a great mixture of neighborhood bar and modern brewery. I cannot speak highly enough of them. There is every type of variety of beer you could ever possibly hope to find over at Streetside. Good people over there doing good stuff. I cannot recommend them enough, and I truly, truly mean that. There's always some event going on over at Streetside, and on December 10th, they have a holiday cookie and beer pairing event starting at 6 p.m. So go check them out. Then when you're there, hey, while you're there, maybe drop our name, drop the postcast, see if you can't get a buck off of each beer on your tab. Huge thank you to Streetside for sponsoring this episode. And on today's episode, boy, do we have a lot to get into. Believe it or not, a lot to get into. There is some FC Cincinnati news, really more news that there isn't news. We're still on Lucho watch. Could Kevin Denke have been signed this summer? We ponder the question. In part two, it's MLS Cup week. MLS Cup presented by Audi, as discussed by the postcast, presented by Gold Star. Chief and Grayson square off and debate who should you actually be rooting for in this one. Compelling arguments made on both sides, believe it or not. And in part three, it is your Patreon questions, including some very funny ones about bans and where would you distribute 60 points in a season. It's a good time. It's a good conversation. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Postcast. And joining me to talk about all of that and more, joined by two gentlemen who probably had varying degrees of enjoyment of the holiday season the last couple of days, joined by the Chief, joined by Grayson. Chief, did Thanksgiving clear your incredibly low bar?
No. The bar is so low, it's impossible to, the bar is, and there is nothing that will happen on a Thanksgiving that will ever cause me to change my opinion. I'm aware Grayson called it a hack take. I'm okay with that. It's fine. I admit it's up there with what's the deal with airplane food in terms of, insightful social commentary. Thanksgiving was fine. My sister hosted. That made things a lot easier because there was no cleanup. And then my sister-in-law was getting married this weekend, which I can say this because none of my in-laws listen. That's kind of a terrorist move to have a wedding on Thanksgiving weekend. But as a result of having a rehearsal dinner on Friday and then the wedding on Saturday, we brokered a deal where there wouldn't be the multi-family stop for Thanksgiving, which really, they don't warn you enough about this as an adult.
Yes.
About how having to stop at multiple places on a holiday really does sort of suck the energy out of you, where it's like, oh, I have to throw down a Thanksgiving meal and then quickly get into a car, drive to another place where you're expected to eat another full Thanksgiving meal.
Yes.
Just doubling up on servings of something I dislike anyway. But as a result, we only had one Thanksgiving to go to, which meant we were back home, at the abode at gentlemen 7 o'clock, just in time to wander up to the bar and watch Tulane lose an absolutely crippling game to just kill the dream of any kind of a college football playoff bid out of the mid majors. So successful holiday weekend. I'm excited to be here. I'm thankful. I'm excited to be really and truly kicking off the off season with you guys because we're going to get some news about the roster. And once we get this final drop of news, I do feel like that's closing the book on 2024, and we really are moving on to the offseason. And I'm excited. Let's bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah. Grayson, speaking of devastating college football losses, how was your holiday season there? Your holiday weekend?
So I was on a plane for basically the entirety of the Ohio State Michigan game.
Probably for the best.
So I didn't watch it. I was following it. Like I know if you're used to rooting for like mediocre teams, you don't understand this, but like it's insane to me that anybody is not on the fire Ryan Day train. Like it's insane to me that there's a single person who before the season wanted him to keep his job at Ohio State. And
wait, breaking news right here. Hot on the heels of pardoning Hunter Biden, President Biden has also pardoned Ryan Day. He will be the head coach of Ohio State football indefinitely. He has received a presidential pardon for the actions folling and during the Michigan game this Saturday.
Democrats have truly given up on the state of Ohio.
So I'll tell you, I had been purposely not been paying attention to like the college football playoff rankings or the playoff picture or anything. So after the Michigan game, like I was kind of assuming that was the end of the season.
Oh no.
And then I see all the things and they're like, oh, well, no, 4 Big Ten teams are locks in this 12-team playoffs. And like, that's stupid. Like it is. First of all, it's horrendous that like theoretically, like Ryan Day like has a chance to save his job. Second of all, like were people really clamoring to have like a 2-loss Tennessee, a 2-loss Miami, a 2-loss Ohio State, all these teams in still technically have a shot at the national title? Like I'm sorry, like the 12-team playoff is very stupid. None of these teams honestly, like this year, nobody deserves, except for Oregon, deserves to play for the national championship. And
glorious. The word you're looking for is glorious.
It used to be like you winnowed down to like 1 or 2 obvious teams and then a couple of like maybes. And there would be like one team at most that had an argument. There were years where when they went to the 14 playoff, there were years where there weren't 4 teams who deserved to be there.
Right.
And which is, I understand you got to fill out the 4. You can't just be like, we're just going 3 this year. But
they should have given them that power. give number 1 a bye.
1 and 2 only. We're not even gonna pick 3 and 4.
Right.
No,
it feels it's insane to be like, oh yeah, Indiana might win the national title. No, they won't. Like they won't.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how mad would you be if Ryan Day won a national title? This year.
You have to choose. Ryan Day wins a national title and he's the head coach for 5 more years, or he gets fired this year. And there's no guarantee about any national titles during that next time period.
You know what? If he wins this Mickey Mouse national title, he can be coach for the next 10 years.
No, they screwed up college football the second they stopped just doing bowl games and letting like arbitrary polls decide who had won the national title. That was better. It was more unique, and it was an endless topic of conversation for bar debates and for theoretical matchups that never happened. And you could have these types of discussions. The second it got to playoffs and teams having to compete against cross conferences for playoff pictures, for playoff wins with the BCS, Then all of a sudden, that also leads to the homogenization of college football, where there used to be different styles of play, like in the what's now the Big 12, or what's left of the Big 12 plus Texas and Oklahoma. That used to be option country. You'd have people running the triple option; they'd throw 10 passes a year. You had pro style offenses down in the Southeast. You had West Coast offenses out in the Pac-10. Everybody had their own unique style of play. The Big 10, it was power football, power I. Fullback sets. And once we got to the BCS era, everybody started converging to where it is now, where every team is exactly identical. It's all spread option, read option, or if you're Iowa, just, 3 downs and punt. But if we are going to get away from just everybody goes to a bowl game at the end of the year, this is fantastic. This is awesome. These are games there are more games that mean things down the stretch. You're suddenly scoreboard watching what's happening, 10 states away. You've got Tennessee fans doing Gator chomps because, the Gators are winning some team. This is electric. The only problem with it is we're not used to it yet. And you give this another 10 years, this will be like March Madness on steroids. And they've already ruined college football as far as I'm concerned. So if you are going to ruin it, and not fix it, take it to its logical outcome. And this is its logical outcome right here.
The whatever analogy you want to use has already happened. Like, you can't reverse it.
No.
Yes, like regionalism in college football was the best period of college football, right? It's like we got big boys and running backs in the Big 10. We got fast guys. We got fast guys in the SEC and in Pac-10. And now everybody's got fast guys. Everybody's got big boys.
Right.
And everybody's paying them too. So it's the great equalizer. Everybody's getting paid.
And then everybody can get a quarterback, because it's just like, people fight out for the starting job at Alabama. The guy who loses that job goes and plays at Texas A&M next year.
Right.
Right. Like,
Miami has a decent kicker. Yeah. Alabama poaches them for a couple $100,000.
Dave Portnoy gets involved and decommits a quarterback from LSU to Michigan because there are no rules anymore, and it's just rich people can make this their plaything. And that's great, because this is the logical conclusion. If you're going to get away from regionalism, part of the fun of regionalism was that you had boosters that were giving players cars and no-show jobs, and it was all done under the table, and everybody knew it was happening, and it was just your personal stomach as a program as to how much risk you were willing to assume with this. Now all bets are off, and we're suddenly learning, when everybody can play players, suddenly the same 10 schools don't get all the talent anymore. And that's kind of fun. So we're taking the sport, and like we've reached the level of absurdity with every aspect to it. I'm just ready for the next phase beyond this, which is where we're signing players to 4-year deals, and they can't jump around in the transfer portal. And then we're only a smidge away from Kevin's dream, where all these teams just allow them players to continue for more than 4 years. And, why should Ohio State let good players go to the NFL? You can just be a Buckeye for life and keep playing at Ohio State forever. I'm all into this. This is
4-year contract.
You have fucked the sport up tremendously. Just go with it and let's see where this goes.
If you're already on board with 4-year contracts, what's a 5-year contract? What's a 6-year contract? What's a 7-year contract?
They're already doing that. Isn't like the Utah quarterback on his like 7th or 8th year of college football?
Well, we still have a handful of the COVID eligibility guys floating around there. I
think like Zach Fremantle on Xavier basketball. I think he's been playing for 10 years at this point.
Right.
So I do think that it's fitting that college football went this direction, because it is like really the most American sport. Like, it is the one that like most mirrors our country. Like, we went from like regional identity to contract with America, nationalizing, like all the same bullshit is what happens everywhere now. And who is the real power centers in our country? It's the people, paying the NIL. It's, your car dealership owners. Right.
Yeah.
People that own 6 high-rise Section 8 buildings in Montgomery, Alabama.
Oh,
right?
Qatar
Like
getting involved with Texas A&M and
right.
Florida State reaching out to Saudi Arabia to see if they couldn't buy out the ACC.
What's next? We're going to have disinformation actors from foreign countries on tiger droppings, and all the message boards are calling into the Paul Feinbaum show to try and influence the narrative now.
I'd be shocked if it wasn't already happening.
And the reaction, and it is a way, you know, not just the NIL stuff, but like the conference realignment and everything. Like, yes, a lot of the stuff around amateurism, a lot of the micromanaging that went around, a lot of the ways that players were treated was wrong. And it just feels like the sport, like the country has way overcorrected, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like we've got to be like, we've gone from like identifying like there was stuff that didn't work well to being like, Dave Portnoy can do whatever he wants to me.
Surely there's a middle ground.
At some point, we went horribly awry on this. The biggest issue from this weekend, though, and I'd like Grayson's take on this because I don't know if he saw this, but in the aftermath of the Ohio State-Michigan game, several Michigan student athletes, young scholars, decided that they were going to copy Baker Mayfield, America's hero, and attempt to plant the flag at the center of Ohio Stadium right on the O, which led to a little bit of a kerfuffle that also ended with police pepper spraying Michigan players. My question to you...
No, not Michigan players. The video I saw, they were pepper spraying Ohio State players and Ohio State football staff.
Oh, boy.
I saw a video of Franklin County sheriffs, and of course it was county sheriffs.
Yeah.
I'm putting my foot down, right? Like, of course it was going to be Franklin County sheriffs doing this. Pepper spraying, like, Ohio State players and football staff.
So as a result of this, I don't know where you stand on this.
Somehow this has something to do with Pat Brennan.
Right. My thought is, and I want to be the first, I want to know if we can agree as a podcast to make this our stance. I don't think they should be hosting athletic events in the city of Columbus any longer until they can show the rest of the world and the rest of the sporting world that the players will be safe from this sort of thing in games and after games. And quite frankly, I don't know how you can continue to give Columbus Crew home matches if this is the potential treatment that players may receive following a big game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't want to send Kevin Denke up to play a game in Columbus.
No.
Knowing that if anything goes wrong, the Franklin County Sheriff's Department is going to treat them more harshly than like Capitol Police treated January 6 people.
Yes. It's worth...
Also, by the way,
please,
they should just let them fight, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Like this is
football.
Like,
already
this
wearing
is a sign
pads.
of like America decaying. Like whatever result of like a couple of football players fighting each other and like coaches getting in the middle and like people separating them and it eventually deflating. Like these things have always done.
Yes.
For decades.
And happened at least two other times later in the day with other schools.
Right. Just let
them do it.
It's football.
The outcome of it, we've seen that many, many times.
Yeah.
Okay. What we don't need is
chemical weapons.
Chemical weapons. Yeah, we don't need the sheriff's department spraying stuff in the eyes of guys who are going to be, needed for the very important and very good college football playoff system that we have right now that recognizes that you can have a couple of slip ups during the course of the season. That doesn't mean you're not the best team in the country and you can still get a chance to prove it.
Right. Look, they let them fight in baseball. They let them fight in hockey. The only sport where everyone is padded up with a helmet on, they're like, no, we can't have this. This needs to stop.
The most violent sport. We're terrified of punches.
So remember the Malice in the Palace?
Love it. I was watching it live. It was one of the most electric sporting events of all time.
Is there any thought in your head that would have been improved by like the police being more involved with it? No.
More pepper spray being involved. No, the other problem I have with this too is I find Gus Johnson to be kind of a clown. I've never been on the Gus Johnson bandwagon as an announcer, but I hate it when in these big moments where there are fights or there are things like this happening, we get the announcers going sanctimonious.
Yeah.
That, oh my gosh, this is a dark moment for our sport. This is awful. This reflects so poorly on these two prestigious academic institutions. These teams competed hard, and there's no need for this. Fuck no. I want the announcers cheering it on. I want somebody talking about how this is what a rivalry is supposed to be like. You're supposed to hate these other guys. No, we've gotten too much of this nonsense in sports now, where everybody grows up playing AAU ball and they see each other at all these various events and they know each other and nobody wants to fight. I want to get back to the day where Ohio State and Michigan hated one another and they were willing to fight on the field after the game was over. And maybe someone was waiting in the parking lot afterwards. I don't know. But like the fact that the announcers, when this happened, and they always do this. They always get sanctimonious and they always get like try to appear bigger than the moment. No, I want them cheering it on. I want them going like Kevin Harlan and calling the fight, like calling out when people are hitting punches, calling out who's winning. I want them to like start taunting people that get knocked out in these situations. It's so anger inducing because that was the most exciting part of the game. The game was horrendous otherwise.
So I think that I feel like I've like kind of a, level-headed centrist take to this.
Always welcomed in this sort of environment.
So I don't want the announcer necessarily egging it on or calling the fight, but just keep the camera on it.
Yeah.
Right. Just don't talk over it. Don't decry it. Don't be like, oh, this isn't who we are. We know who we are. Like, this is who we are. I'm sorry. Like, yeah. We were in a totally like degraded society. Like, don't pretend like things aren't how they are. Like, maybe just show things as they are. And either worst case scenario, you're being honest. Best case scenario, you might have people thinking like, I wonder why this always happens.
Right. Like, I would think, too, from a practical standpoint, you don't want your commentators to say what you're saying is a horrific thing because it sort of tips your hand to the idea that, like, football as violence is not appropriate to put on television.
Like, is the pushing fight more dangerous than what they just did for 3.5 hours?
Right. Or, like, you're going to play up, to Chiefs' point, you're going to play up the rivalry, play up that these teams hate each other, play up the moment. And then when somebody's emotions match that moment, you go, whoa, you weren't actually supposed to care that much. It's like, all right, well, what are we doing here then? It's all pretend. Like, then the game doesn't matter that much, and shut the hell up about it. Stop paying so much money to broadcast it.
But yeah, no more athletic events in Columbus until we figure out what the hell is going on here. That's just my only request here with this.
The last time they hosted MLS Cup, it was COVID year. So, they haven't truly been tested for a large event in Columbus. And
the last time they hosted MLS Cup with the crowd, their crowd was throwing cans of beer and trash at the Portland Timbers in like the 30th minute of the game or something like that.
And couldn't queue up properly and get into the stadium properly.
Because they don't know how to handle a big crowd in Columbus. Because really, the Blue Jackets suck.
It's a farmer city.
Yeah. Yes. No, the Blue Jackets suck.
Farmers League city.
So they don't draw anything. So you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And then with Ohio State, they never really host big events with Ohio State, because as anyone that's been to an Ohio State game can tell you, the overwhelming majority of the fans closest to the field like have an average age of pre-embalmed, and they've been holding on to their tickets forever. They don't cheer, and it makes the environment kind of suck because they tell you to sit down when you're trying to get hyped for a minute. So they don't really have rowdy crowds there either anymore, as any Ohio State fan will like legitimately tell you. Cintas at Xavier, similar problem. So they don't know how to deal with this. They don't know how to deal with these types of situations. And the Crew never drew crowds ever during the course of their history. So they haven't been tested in the crucible like we've in Cincinnati, where we routinely draw large crowds of very angry people that go to Bengals games. We routinely draw very large crowds for FC Cincinnati. Even UC during its heyday was a lot younger and drunker of a crowd. They're just better. We're just better at dealing with this down here. Columbus, they resort to physical violence and chemical weapons. And you know what? I don't think that's appropriate. And I'm with Grayson. I don't believe Kevin Denke, as the highest paid transfer in MLS history, should have to subject himself to the fear that at the end of the game, he will be pepper sprayed simply for outperforming the local team and making people angry.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously the official position of the postcast then is that the Crew should be relocated to Cleveland.
That's absolutely true. Or at least all their home games should be played in Cleveland until, like I said, we figure out what the hell is going on here. And also, Kevin, can I get a commitment from you as the only person on this podcast that has ever managed to throw a flag somewhere?
Yes.
Will you manage, if the At Hell Is Real next year, if the FC can get a win there, will you pledge to get a flag down to the field so that it can be planted at the center of Crew Stadium?
Not only that, yes, of course. Not only that, there's a great story from Turkish football where a fan hid inside of the advertising boards. I'm going to mess up which two teams it was. It was one of the big three in Turkey, but they hid inside of the advertising boards from the night before. And during the game, ran out onto the field and planted their team's flag onto the field, because they were already behind security at that point, because they were hiding inside of the advertising boards around the stadium. I will do that. That is my commitment. That is much harder with electronic boards, but I'll pull it off.
Appreciate you.
So they better move the games, or
right,
they're going to have
we won't need to incident. Do that because it won't be there. So.
Oh, God. Well, hey, look. We needed something to talk about because we are truly in the depths of the offseason. There isn't much to talk about with FC Cincinnati at the moment.
Why is that, Kevin? Why are we starved for news right now?
Well, if we were almost literally any other MLS side outside of, I believe, 5 others, we would have plenty to talk about, because this the 27th of November is when all of the roster decisions were supposed to be announced. Now, with that, I don't believe we would get an official announcement on Orishano or Kelsey, but regardless, we don't have an official announcement on anybody. Now that is, with our luck, that will likely mean that the team will announce this on Monday and make all of this sort of moot. But
we know the decisions are made.
The decisions have to be made with
that be submitted to the league on Wednesday.
Or, with the league.
And then I think that the option deadlines for Orishano and Kelsey were,
predetermined in their
this
contracts.
weekend.
Yeah. A lot of smoke around December 6th, December 7th, December 1st. Seeing those dates pop up quite a bit. And it makes sense. It gives teams about a month before the January transfer window opens up, give them an opportunity to figure out what's going on. So in all likelihood, FC Cincinnati has picked up the option for Orishano. There's some vague reporting out of Argentina about that. And as far as we can tell, it would appear that they could not reach an agreement on Kevin Kelsey. Again, according to vague, not particularly highly respectable Twitter sources, but that is what we're looking at right now. And that does sort of align with how I would have seen this going, right, Grayson? Like, obviously pick up Orishano and Kelsey if you can get him to walk down from that $7 million number.
Yeah, it is how you would see it. I mean, like, Orishano feels like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Unless there's something like crazy, unless there's some crazy trigger that he hit with it would,
force him to
jack
be a
up his
DP
salary
or
like
something.
8x or something.
Yeah.
But with Kelsey, yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like a $7 million transfer. It doesn't feel like a $5 million transfer, but also, he's 20 years old. He has shown some abilities on the field, and yeah, like you're not spending $5 or $7 million on this guy. You're going into next season with at least 3 U22s, and I'll tell you how I feel about the Kevin Kelsey choice when I see what they do with the open U22 spots. I mean, we don't know. I guess we could talk about it in more detail, like when we have more actual news on it. But yeah, I mean, like, did I expect them to spend like $7 or close to $1 million on Kevin Kelsey? No. How do I feel about it? I don't know. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah. I think the issue is I think Grayson is right, and that like how you feel about the Kevin Kelsey deal is in direct proportion to do they spend on these U22 spots. The problem is it's $5 million would be a lot of money to pay for someone that isn't going to start. Like if you're going to pay that much money for Kevin Kelsey, just logic dictates he's got to start, either because he's the best player available for that spot, or because you need him to get the minutes required to develop him in order to pay off that $5 million investment down the road. The only two reasons you buy a U22 for high dollars or any sort of like high dollar is that it's an investment property or you think they can play immediately. And it's another way to break the salary cap. And as an investment property, you're going to be chasing the back end of that deal, I think. So yeah, I'm not shocked that that's happening, but I'm with Grayson. If they do not bring back Kevin Kelsey, I think I would need to hear from Albright, or I would want to hear from Albright as to why they don't bring in 2 more U22s this offseason, because they'll have 3 no matter what. And those need to be productive. You need to be doing something with that. Either you are getting young talent that is even if you loan it out elsewhere to try and start, developing it, or you bring guys in who you think can be good depth pieces that are, taken care of on their salary structure in such a way that you don't have to spend a lot of money on a free agent. You got to do that. Otherwise you're leaving resources on the table that other teams are using to get better. And for a team that we've heard, might have to go the 2 DP route to pay all the other salary obligations on this team.
Yeah.
You can't afford to give away low salary number spots like this and just let them go unused.
Well, Galaxy is advancing to MLS Cup Final because of a goal they got from a U22, from a guy they signed as a U22.
Yep.
Right. And like Galaxy has this incredibly deep attack in part because they brought in useful guys as U22s who weren't always like that productive immediately, but they were in the team and they were brought along, and like Jovic has been like very good this year.
Yeah.
And he was good in spurts before.
Yeah.
And finding guys like that who can help your attack is a, not to turn this into MLS Cup, but like to go back to like Kevin Kelsey, like finding like having spots like that you can use to bring in people who, can help even as depth.
Yes,
is something that I really don't think you can overlook, in MLS. And I think it's premature to not go after, but it's premature to talk in detail about the team's overall roster strategy, because we'll see the option decisions, this week. There are going to be movements in and out, from there. We're not going to have a complete picture of the roster until at least January. But my thinking is like, okay, like we're not going to pay for Kevin Kelsey. I don't want this to be a situation where it's like, well, aren't you happy that we set MLS transfer record on this one player?
Yeah,
right. Like, so you pay $16 million for Kevin Denke, and to go back to Galaxy paid 9 and 10, I forget which, for Peck and Paintsell.
Yeah.
Right. Like, yeah, you could pay 16 for one guy. That's ambitious.
8 million for 2.
Do it for 2.
Yeah. Right. 16 for 2. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Grayson, maybe this would be a good article, I think, to lay out sometime. Is sort of an ideal, or not even an ideal, but like a prototypical MLS roster by spend and by profile of player. Because given that we have 3 U22 spots going forward, and the team was probably negotiating some fee around $4 million or probably less for Kevin Kelsey, I think it's fair to say that we should, I think, this would be my position, I think we should be expecting FC Cincinnati to be spending at least $2 million across either, with transfer fees, because that's the only way you actually get value out of a U22 spot, $2 million on a general defender, $2 million generally on a midfielder, $2 million on an attacker, and then adjust based on where those needs are. So we're not desperate for a U22 center back, given where this roster stands right now. So if that's $4 million for an attacker and $2 million for a midfielder, that seems like a good allocation of resources.
But we have been credibly linked to a U22 center back,
which is fine.
Which may indicate that there's thoughts about other roster movement.
Right.
Which we don't know yet. So is for your question, Kevin, I have not given enough thought to how much money per roster spot or whatever. I do think that it is possible to paper over an overall lack of investment with one big splash.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's what's happening, because we have no reason to believe that's what's happening. But, it's possible. It's just, I guess it's just something to keep your eye on, right?
It's moves we've seen in MLS before.
Pumped about the Kevin Denke move. Very excited to see what else they do. There does have to be else.
Yeah.
If that's literally it, oh dear God.
And to be fair, we're not saying that's it.
Right.
I don't want to sound like we're accusing anybody of anything.
I think it's hilarious.
I think there are going to be other moves. Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be hilarious to say that definitively on December 1st when A, the window isn't open, and B, it will be open for another 4 months.
Yes.
But we're already panicking about lack of signing. That would be
not panicking, just saying this literally cannot be it.
So we did get a field of what we were talking about. Kevin Kelsey. If it is indeed true that he is moving on and they are not spending, they did not reach a deal for him,
then I'll write out. No, I'm just kidding.
Then there goes our 7th choice striker on a team that couldn't score goals to literally save its life.
Totally fine with it. Excited to see what they do next.
Yeah. That I said on a previous episode, if you were going to spend, I'm sure some people say, screw it, to U22 spot, spend the money, doesn't matter. You could spend that $7 million across a couple of players as good as Kelsey, I think, with some half decent scouting. So
yeah, put it this way: I'd rather have all U22 spots used on $2 million players than one $7 million Kevin Kelsey.
Yeah,
agreed. Yep, agreed.
Or, if we're just...
Or 3 $7 million U22s. I'm okay
do
with that
the
too.
Inter Miami move.
Use the spots. That's all I care about.
Yeah. And Inter Miami, I think, won or, broke the points record on the back of some high value U22 guys. There were some other superstars thrown in there, whatever. But a lot of minutes came from a lot of young guys that were worth quite a bit of money.
They get a lot of minutes from U22 guys.
Yeah. Also, just worth noting on the Kevin Kelsey bit, we have been told multiple times deals for him have died and then they have come back to life. So maybe this loan agreement is done and then come April or March, it's back up again. He was not being used all that much at Shakhtar Donetsk. It doesn't seem like a great spot of the world to be in at the moment. If I were just looking at my future in the immediate term, and
it ain't like he increased his value here.
Yeah.
Whatever they had him valued at before this started, it ain't like he went and set the world on fire here.
Yeah, it's not like he's a $15 million striker and they really want to get every penny of his transfer fee back. Yeah. Elsewhere on the FC Cincinnati news, and really the only news here is that there is no news. Lucho Acosta is still asking his agent to find a team in Argentina or Brazil to spend a lot of money on him. There were some super funny Google translated tweets going around that there may be some future contact in the future if maybe somebody would just reach out, which is always adorable to see that. Lucho was photographed getting his haircut in Argentina, which
neat.
Is not Cincinnati. I guess it's the only notable thing.
It's also not news that one of our players returned home since they have a couple weeks off. I mean, famously, none of these guys got a break last year. I think the offseason lasted 20 minutes. So, yeah, if I was an FC Cincinnati player, I would be at least taking advantage of one of the only benefits for players to being dumped out of the playoffs. And that's to actually get some time off to go back to wherever it is they call home.
Yeah. And if you are very much on team, I want Lucho to stay. Let him go home as much as possible now. Get it out of his system. Maybe by the time next season rolls around, he's sick of Argentina. He can't wait to get out of there. I don't know.
I would not put your money on that
outcome. Speaking of putting your money on it, Chief, if you had to put your money on it, as of December 1st at 9:19 p.m., is Lucho a member of the 2025 FC Cincinnati team next year?
No, and I would bet heavy money on that at this point.
Oh, no. Grayson. Yeah. Or explain your thought. Explain your thought, please.
No, it's just it feels very, very done. And the lack of comment by the team to anything about this of Lucho is one of our players. We understand he's frustrated, but we expect him to be back here and be a contributing member of the 2025 FC Cincinnati side. It feels like they let him pop off and then just let him go because they kind of already know where this is. And that kind of aligns with a lot of other things. Like when you step back and you remove yourself from just sort of the emotion of the Lucho situation as a fan.
Yeah.
Don't you just get the sense he's kind of been checked out a little bit for the last couple months? And I don't mean that like he was dogging it by any stretch of the imagination, but just that, didn't it feel like when you were watching Lucho Acosta down the stretch, it wasn't really the same guy that you were watching a year ago or 2 years ago or even earlier in the year? And so to me, when he says, I just made my mind up recently, it felt like he had kind of made his mind up down the road a lot earlier down the road than, maybe he was letting on.
We were there, but it really did feel like the last time Lucho cared and was trying was that New York Red Bulls match right before the International and then Leagues Cup break. And I think Leagues Cup really took it out of Lucho. Like somewhere there, not blaming Leagues Cup, although I will if I need a narrative to spin. It's somewhere around there where Lucho stops caring.
I don't say caring is not the right word.
Not just caring.
Like that his head was just not in it. Or that
quiet quitting.
It's because I don't want to get the sense, I don't want to create the narrative out there that Lucho wasn't hustling, he wasn't trying. It just felt like a different guy.
Yeah.
Around that time period, such that when you go back and you look at it, him saying he's done and then posting pictures of himself back home and then telling ESPN that he wants out and that he's already made the decision, that he's already gone. So I'm going to say right now, as we sit here, I do not believe that Lucho will be a member of the 2025 roster. And to quote Jonah Hill's fake character in Moneyball, that opens up a lot of exciting possibilities for the FC in this upcoming season.
We'll have to recreate Lucho in the aggregate, I think.
So I hear you, and I agree with all of your observations about Lucho, and I've heard all the crap about, why he would want to move on.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can't get away from two things. I guess three things, but the first is kind of two wrapped in together.
Okay.
One is the economics of a South American move. there's two leagues in South America that Lucho Acosta would possibly play in. One is Brazil, one is Argentina.
Yep.
If you look at the amount of money that these leagues pay on transfer fees, it is not a lot for a player 30 years old or over, unless that player is named Carlos Tevez.
Yeah, a superstar.
Okay. So like Lucho would be essentially, for any amount of money that would be in the realm of, to me, worth talking about for Lucho, we are talking about a record for a like 30 plus year old player.
What number is
leagues.
that? Or what ballpark is that for you?
It's like, north of 5.
Yeah.
I think 4 gets it done. But
4
I agree with you.
That would still be in that record.
Right, I agree with
pretty
you. I'm
high.
just saying. I think that the conversation starts at $4 million for Lucho.
And like the clubs that in 23, the clubs that were talked about with him, like the one club that was linked to him was Vasco da Gama, and Vasco had like never paid hardly anything for a player because they develop players and they get players, who are cast offs from bigger clubs, and they were routinely, in trouble for not being able to make payroll, and they didn't have anybody on their team making more than like $1 million a year,
Yeah.
And Lucho was making more than basically anybody in these leagues, and like double the highest paid player on most of the teams in these leagues. And he's only been making north of $4 million for like a year.
Yeah.
So like,
Because what he was making 2 prior to this year?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Okay.
So, and he wasn't making, and he wasn't making that before he came here.
No.
Because I think in DC, he was in like the $700,000 range. And in Mexico, it had to have been certainly not more than what he came here for, because he wasn't like, there's no way he came here and took a pay cut.
Right. That'd be insane. Yeah.
So, and like, obviously, like none of this is chump change, even at his salary in DC.
Yeah.
But like, this is a guy who probably, I assume, was living like he was going to be making, $1 million, like he was going to be making like these salaries year over year. And so now suddenly he's going to go take a 50% or more pay cut to play somewhere else. Yeah. And then that's it for him.
Yeah. This
like
will likely be his last deal.
Once he takes that pay cut, he's never making $4 million a year again.
Yeah.
Right. If he stays, he's going to get raises.
Right.
Like at least through I assume he's got like built-in raises through the end of his deal.
At least bonus, bonus is available.
Bonus potential. So the economics are crazy to me. Like
what's the cost of living difference between being in Brazil versus Ohio? Can you live like a $4 millionaire in Ohio on like $1 million and a half in Brazil? I genuinely don't know.
I don't know about like if it's like a big city like Rio, depending on where you're going to live. Like a lot of these places, you got to live behind like locked walls, and you got to have like security on staff and everything. Like, I mean, I see, and maybe you're spending more money out at the club and stuff. Like,
right.
Like I was, so like when I was in, I'm not an expert at cost of living in South America by any means, but like when I was in Chile, I went to, like, we were staying in like a pretty nice part of Santiago, and like the cost out at the restaurant and like for drinks and like for cocktails was like basically the same as here. Maybe like a little cheaper. Like the wine tourism was like pretty expensive. Like a bottle of wine was about the same as it costs here, like in a nice area. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if like a good area of like Rio de Janeiro is, not super cheap. But I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm just curious.
I'm sure. I bet somebody in the Discord is an expert, or at least will claim to be an expert.
That's all I need, honestly.
So anyway, one is
it's a good point though, Chief. Yeah, it's something to think about.
Yeah, so like the economics of it are tough for me, and then two, the team has often thought like, oh, we'll get like a good deal for this guy who is either forcing himself out intentionally or forcing himself out through how he's being. And they've had mixed results on that. They got a good transfer fee in for Brenner. They got a great transfer fee in for Vasquez. They thought they were going to get, at least publicly, they thought they were going to get a transfer fee for Bupenza. They didn't get anything for him. And I have to think that affected what they did in the summer. I have to think that's the case.
Barreal feels like a disappointment.
Barreal also is, there has not been like solid reporting out of South America that Cruzeiro is like about to pay for Barreal, and I wonder
Let him come back.
Oh my God, that screws up everything.
I wonder if that has to do with the fact that the team has been very wishy-washy about what they're doing with Luka. That they assumed that they would get $4 million for Alvaro and then spend the 2.8 to finish the Luka deal. And if that doesn't happen, and then so like, okay, if the economics that I'm seeing, at least rationally, and I'm happy for someone to explain to me how it's different. Like I'm happy if somebody can like lay out how this is differently than what I'm seeing it, because I would love to be wrong on it. But if you can't get like any money for Lucho, and he's going to have to take a big pay cut, you end up with what, like a disgruntled Lucho next year. Oof. Or you let him go
for free
on a free.
Ugh.
And then what do you do to replace him?
Barry.
Yeah, I don't think you can let him go. I don't think you can let him go out of free. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think ownership.
Well, you let him go for like $1 million. How are you going to replace him?
I mean, the way you're going to replace him is the fact that, like, what does he have left? 3 years.
Ownership shells out money.
Well, the ownership is already shelling out money for Lucho, so it's like they already have him under contract for 3 more years. I want to say at $4 million each, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's $12 million they've committed already.
So so ownership has to look at that as dead money. That's $12 million we have already committed to spend on Lucho's position over the next 3 years. If you get like a $3 million or a $4 million transfer fee on Lucho, then your total spend available at that position is $15-16 million between salary and whatever after you pay his player acquisition costs. So if you bring in a guy on like a $10 million transfer fee and sign him to a 3+1 deal at like $1.5 million per, that's Cucho Hernandez right there. So like you can go.
I think Cucho makes like 3.
I thought he was like at $1.5 million. Even 3 then. Like even 3. He was on a $10 million transfer fee plus $3 million a year, $19 million. You're in the ballpark there of like what Cucho Hernandez is. You're definitely where Diego Rossi is. I know that for a fact. Because Rossi's not making 3 a year and his transfer fee was only $8 million. So like you can go find a good player without having ownership, without requiring ownership to commit new money to the position, just because they gave Lucho this big deal in the offseason, and that's already money they were intending to spend anyway.
Okay. Rossi is at 2.6.
Ooh.
And
so Rossi would be perfect. It's 2.6 times 3.
Cucho's also at 2.6.
Okay.
Here's what else I would tell you. Okay. I hear you on approximately the Cucho Rossi money. An alternative example that does fit that scenario, like an $8 million transfer fee, less than $2 million salary, and Aaron Bupenza.
Yeah,
Sure.
And when they had that amount of money available last time that they had an open DP spot that they filled, that's who they found.
Sure. But like,
So if they could have found a Lucho or a Cucho for $7 or $8 million in a relatively, in this grand scheme of things, low salary, why didn't they do that in 2023?
because they weren't looking for that. They were looking for someone who could come in immediately and score goals. They were looking for someone.
Cucho could have done that.
Sure, but Cucho was famously already signed to the Columbus Crew at that point.
there is, to my understanding, but one Cucho.
Right.
And I guess sometime between now and then, Cucho 2 has emerged on the scene.
So somewhere out there, like, it's a big wide world. They'll find someone. Like, and if your worry is, oh, they'll find the next Aaron Bupenza, then the contract you need to be worried about is Chris Albright. Then at that point, because then you've made it into your mind that he can't buy players and can't find players, and you're already probably writing off Kevin Denke as a bust again because wow, they spent and we're not going to get down that road. And so far,
hold on, I'm just saying that
Grayson hates Kevin Denke. It's already been noted.
True. He's already saying he's the next Aaron Bupenza. I heard it right here.
I'm just saying that there has been a lot of confidence about the transfer fees that they're going to get for certain players,
yes,
about the replacements of certain players. And I do think that some heed needs to be paid to the fact that, like, they already have a really good player and they're paying him more than anybody else is going to pay him. So
Sure.
like, the starting point is we have a really good player.
Yeah.
Do you have a really good player right now? Because that's the other problem too, is like, if he doesn't want to be here and he's going to look like he did for the last half of this year, do you really have a good player on the roster? Or do you have a player with the same name as a guy who used to be a good player, but making $4 million a year?
Well, the first time he passes to Kevin Denke,
all's forgiven.
And he sees that ball actually hit the back of the net, all will be forgiven. And then we'll have to figure out who takes penalties.
Be a man reborn.
The problem is, I don't think you're the one who needs to forgive him for that to be a reality.
Grayson, just to add more fuel to the fire you've got here, Stuart, let me ask a dangerous question. Why wasn't Kevin Denke signed this summer?
I don't know. The Pat Brennan article that came out this week talked about prior approaches the team had made to Denke that were unsuccessful. In the as to the summer, his article at least implied that the team was not looking at Denke in the summer.
Yeah,
that he was talking to teams in Europe. And we were talking to just other players. And based on what we got him for, and based on what we know Cercle Bruges rejected, or at least what Belgian media reported Cercle Bruges rejected from Spain, which was 12 million.
Yeah.
We got him for 16. Apparently FC Cincinnati was putting 20 on the table for Josh Sargent or Weston McKennie. They put 15 on the table for Berterame. It does feel like Kevin Denke could have gotten done in the summer at those numbers.
Given how the European transfer window works, generally prices go up after the summer transfer window as you get into the winter. So yeah, like, if he's available for 16 million.
I actually don't know if I agree with that. But
no, you think prices go down in the winter?
Yeah, I mean, I think that teams are less likely to part from players in the middle of the season. I think prices probably go up.
Right. So what I'm saying is,
in the winter,
he could have been made available for less than 16 in the summer. Is what I'm trying to get at. We don't know that, but I'm just saying, in general, things get more expensive.
Right. But it does feel like, he was on the market in the summer.
Yeah,
they were putting the amounts of money on the table that seemingly it could have gotten done, in the summer, and so you wonder why, you wonder if maybe that we hadn't been so excited about bringing like a U.S. men's national team players over, this could have gotten done and the season wouldn't be over. But
Chief seems mad about this idea.
I do think it's not a fair hypothetical. I do think it's not a fair criticism because we don't have anything solid to go on. Like, for all we know, they were told hard no, he's not coming to MLS in the summer.
Right.
Like, that's not in the article, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
Right. No, they could they have gotten him over the summer? I don't know. There's no way of knowing where his headspace was on a move to MLS. It sounds like he needed some convincing that MLS was a good option for him. And it sounds like probably when he was approached the last time, he had to think it over a little bit. And you get the sense that personal relationships and like buying into something is important for Denke. He came over here, he saw a game. Like, there was all part of like this wooing process they had to do to get him to say yes or get him to yes. We have no idea where that was during the summer. Remember, in the summertime, they had a limited window in order to do this business. They have an unlimited amount of time to get it done right now, basically, at least until January, when the European window closes. But, you know, like, they thought they had 2 other deals done.
Yeah.
The real question, and I don't know that we'll ever get an answer to this, is does Albright, if you gave Albright the choice of having Berterame or Denke, which one he'd rather have on his roster? It may well be the case that he just ranks Berterame higher, maybe ranked him higher for a team that needed something to push across the finish line mid-season, more of a ready-made product that plays on the continent. There's probably less of a learning curve to getting into MLS from Liga MX. I don't know. I don't know what Albright thinks about these 2 players. I don't know which one he'd rather have. If you lined up Sargent, Berterame, and Denke, I don't know how he'd rank those players. It may well be that he was chasing after 2 players that he thinks fits better with the system than Denke. Just because he's a record transfer and the type of player that doesn't come over here often doesn't mean that Albright didn't rate 2 other players higher or that we should be less excited about Denke.
God, I would love to know. I'd love to know the answer to that question of the ranking of the 3.
I would like to know the answer to that question. I would also like to know if, I would just out of curiosity, if approaches were made in the summer.
Yeah.
Given that he was already on the radar. However, to Chief's point, Denke did give a interview to, like, what's it called? The Golazo show.
Yeah.
On like CBS.com or whatever, like Paramount Plus, basically.
Yes. It's their free channel available on a couple of platforms.
And it's a really good interview. And, you know, he seems like so pumped to be coming over. But also they ask him a question of, you know, what went into your decision to like come to MLS, and he immediately, you know, deflects it he's like, MLS, no, Cincinnati. And he talks specifically about what made him excited about coming to Cincinnati, like coming over to see the stadium, see the facilities, meet the people and everything.
That's such a good point.
You know, I think that, that it's very possible that it just took a lot of, because he had because it is not the same to go to any MLS team. Yeah.
It's something like I didn't really think about it till you said it. I also watched this interview and didn't draw this conclusion then. It is an incredibly patronizing thing that MLS gets that I don't think happens with a lot of other leagues. I'm sure to some degree it does, but you never see a player signing for a German team and go, wow, what does it mean to join the Bundesliga? No. What does it mean to join Wolves? What does it mean to join a historic club like Bayern Munich? Bayern Munich?
Nobody's gonna ask like a guy who signs for like Anderlecht,
right?
You know, what made you make the decision to like come to Belgium?
Right.
It's like, why did you sign with Anderlecht?
Right.
Well, it's like, well, Anderlecht is a big club that has big dreams.
Right.
And I can be the player that I want to be on the stage that Anderlecht allows me. And whether anybody around the league or the country likes it or not, like at least for the near future, FC Cincinnati should be thinking of itself and presenting itself as, an Anderlecht of MLS, as a team that is putting players on a big stage and giving players the platform to do big things in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's what you're selling to a player like Kevin Denke. And that's why it's also not like necessarily accurate to be like he came to MLS, because, he didn't go to San Jose.
Right. Didn't go to Columbus either, for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
There's bastards in San Diego.
Right. Nobody wants to go there. It's interesting to me. I would love to know Chris Albright's thought process behind the matter, but I'm happy he's here. And whatever Chris ranked these players, if you put that ranking in front of me, he's far and away number one on that list for me over the other players that were mentioned.
Yeah. We've said that, and he scored twice today.
Yes.
3 times, actually.
3 times. One was called back. But,
right. So he'll fit in great here, having one of his 3 goals called back.
And they lost having scored twice. So well done.
We've said it. I don't know if there's any harm in saying it again, but yeah, like if you put him, Bertarame or Sargent in front of me, he's the one I'm picking 10 times out of 10. So, whether Kevin, we could have signed him in the summer or not, we got him now.
Fun hypothetical to get mad about years from now in a bar, hanging out with some old buddies. Not for nothing, Bertarame scored twice today as well. I just don't want that to go unnoted for the poor guy. With that, I believe that wraps up our FCC portion of the show. Let's go on over to part 2. We'll touch on a little bit of MLS playoffs. And then part 3, we got a lot of November Patreon questions to get to. So let's talk a little MLS Cup and let's get to those questions. And before we get to the next part of the episode, I want to tell you about our friends over at Cincy Shirts, as if you need me to tell you about them. Let's be real. If you are in the market for a t-shirt, dare I say, a Cincinnati themed t-shirt, why are you looking anywhere else other than Cincy Shirts? They've got the best stuff. They've got awesome Reds, Bengals, FC Cincinnati gear. They've got all sorts of gear for your whatever you got going on, okay? That's how big and broad it is. You've got an old-timey classic amusement park that is your favorite from the Cincinnati area. I bet you they got a t-shirt about it. Did one of your old favorite franchises fold, or maybe a franchise you never got to see play fold? I bet you they've got a t-shirt for them. It's a really cool selection. I got to tell you, in-store is maybe the best way to go. They will print on site. You didn't hear it from me, but you can work out some special arrangements. Say you've got a design you really like, but you want it on the back of a shirt. I bet you could talk them into it. Okay. It's a good time. It's a really, really good shop. They're good people over there. You can find them in Loveland. You can find them in Oakley Hyde Park, and you can find them in Northern Kentucky, and they print online as well. They'll ship to you anywhere. Now, here's the best part. They sell gear for the post. That's right. You want an Opie shirt? They've got that. You want one of the 12 shirt? They got that. You want to let folks know how you feel about San Diego? Boy, there is a shirt to show people that, okay? Check them out, Cincy Shirts. When you're there, use the promo code ThePostCincy. All one word, all caps. They'll knock 10% off of the entire order. That works on post gear as well. So please do not buy our stuff at full price, okay? Use the code, knock a couple bucks off for yourself. So thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring this episode. Thank you, listener, for using the code. All right, we are back, and despite FC Cincinnati's season being over, the MLS season very rudely just kept on continuing. This weekend was the conference finals, which I always find confusing in American sports. I hate having finals that aren't the finals. Stop doing conference finals. It's the MLS Cup presented by Audi, as discussed by the postcast presented by Gold Star. Semifinals. Stop doing this. Winning
Clearly.
the Eastern Conference in the playoffs doesn't count. That's not the title. I think that is dumb. At a minimum, the Supporter Shield ranking is the who won the East this year. Miami won the East this year, not the New York Red Bulls. I'll die on that hill. But New York Red Bulls advance 1-0 over Orlando. LA Galaxy advance 1-0 over the Seattle Sounders, giving us, very funny, in an era of messy hype, we finally got an LA New York finals for MLS Cup. I believe the first one ever. And yeah, I don't know. It's a fan base in Red Bulls that is not very large. It's the wrong LA team from a media marketing hype train. This is fun.
So Grayson and I had this idea earlier today that originated on the Discord. And that's that we feel that there's probably a lot of people out there that don't know really who to root for in this MLS Cup final. And so we would each take a team, one of these two teams, and argue for why this should be the team that you are rooting for in these playoffs. And we decided earlier today, I will be advocating that the New York Red Bulls should be the team that you are rooting for. Grayson will argue in favor of LA Galaxy. Grayson, would you like to go first? Or would you like me to go first?
Okay, so I did think about how we should do this, and I have a proposal.
Oh boy.
We each give a little spiel that's basically like our primary argument.
Your opening statement, as it were.
Right. And then
your thesis.
Yeah, so like you or I will go first, then the other person will go second, but it's just like your primary thing, right?
Right.
And then we'll go back to the first person and respond, and we'll do like responses as the second.
Oh, it's Lincoln Douglas debating. I haven't done this since high school.
Okay. Well, I've never done debate stuff, so I invented this as far as I know. Nice. Okay. So this way, like, it doesn't really matter so much like who goes first, right?
Right.
Because it's like we're just doing like our positive case to start.
All right. So,
but can you do the modern meta debate game where you just spit out as many possible arguments as possible, and then every single point that your opponent does not refute or address is a point to them?
Right. Or do the no. ending of 8 Mile, where I know everything you're about to say against me.
Yes.
So I'm happy to go first.
Please, by all means.
I have I guess I have like four or 5 points that I think
excuse me
are why an FC Cincinnati fan should be rooting for LA Galaxy in MLS Cup Final. Number one,
wow.
I'm rooting for the Western Conference. I'd be rooting for the Western Conference no matter who this team was, because if an Eastern Conference team wins, I'm going to be nagged by, if only we had gone through, it would have been us, right? And this would be just essentially a replay of 2023 all over again, where if we had held on against Columbus, we would have then hosted and beaten LAFC. And I don't want that counterfactual to be like kind of my narrative this year. So I want to be able to say like, well, Galaxy was such a juggernaut that no one would have beaten them. Okay. Number two, LA Galaxy has won a ton, and if we want to talk about like who most people would be unhappy about, it's got to be Galaxy, because, they've won plenty. Right. And just Galaxy winning this year, that's just another one. Right. It's not that big of a deal for them. Number three, conversely, Red Bull have never won. And I want as few teams to win MLS Cup before FC Cincinnati as possible. So if Red Bull win MLS Cup before us, that's another team that has beaten us to the star above the badge. Number 4, this is kind of a argument about like the philosophy of like how to build an MLS team. And one of my fears is that we're going to go the way of Philadelphia, that we're going to have like a good GM and a good coach and get good results consistently for a number of years, but never do enough to get to really win, anything of consequence. If Red Bull win, that's like an argument on your PowerPoint that like, yeah, you can just play like a pressing style. You can invest little on your roster. You can get some academy guys. You can pick some good, good low price talent, get a decent coach and have, one good DP and you can win MLS Cup with that. And, I don't want that for us. If LA Galaxy win, it's like, the team that locked and loaded its team with attacking talent is the team that won. And I want FC Cincinnati to be aiming to be that team that is constantly signing players. Because we saw what happened this year when they didn't sign players, when they said, we got an MVP and we have a good defense, on our day we can go through, and they didn't do it. And I want the team to keep ambition. So I want teams that show ambition to be the teams that win championships in this league. And then
there's more.
It's the longest opening statement ever.
One more point is Ricky Puig is down.
He is
with the ACL, so he's going to miss the cup.
Win it for Ricky?
No. There was a thought that FC Cincinnati's season would be sunk if Lucho Acosta didn't get back to his best.
Which turned out to be accurate.
Ricky Puig but doesn't have to be that way, as Ricky Puig going down may show that LA Galaxy built a team in a way where they could lose their. I think he was an MVP finalist, maybe not. But he was a lot of people's. Yeah, he was a lot of people's MVP of the league. He put up great numbers. He was very influential in their offense, and they didn't just rest on the fact that they had a really good player. They brought in Marco Reus in the summer. They have 2 other top tier DPs. They have a top U22. That team is loaded with attacking talent. They're not just reliant on that one guy. And if LA Galaxy win and they score like they've been scoring, they're going to show that like you don't have to be satisfied being okay with just one talisman DP, that you can sign multiple good players. And so that if that one player isn't available, maybe you can still be competitive. And, again, like I think that's a vision of a league that I want to see. And one last point.
Jesus Christ. Come on.
You've overthought
I just thought of this. Like, he's
filibustering me at this point.
Phil Anschutz saved this league back in the day. Saved this league. Bailed it out of financial ruin. And Red Bulls are a subsidiary of a global soccer empire that doesn't even care about New York Red Bull. LA Galaxy deserves to win. Red Bull deserves to be out.
So
that's it.
We've heard from the pro Johnny Nelson camp. Let's hear from the chief.
Little known fact, it was also Phil that convinced Carl to invest in this little soccer thing, this little soccer side business, if you believe your FC Cincinnati lore. All right. This is why I'm not going to talk for that long because I was told just to prepare a short opening statement just now.
The judges will note this.
I know.
I don't think he said a short opening. I said it's our positive case.
All right. My positive case for the New York Red Bulls being your rooting interest team in this tournament. Number 1, if you are someone that wants to put more stock in the fact that FC Cincinnati won the Supporters Shield last year and was truly the best team in MLS, and have not been recognized for the fact that they won the harder trophy to win, you should be in the position where you want anything that devalues MLS Cup to back up that argument. And nothing will devalue MLS Cup more than a 7th place team that I think won 3 of its last 20 matches or something like that. Like it was
Something like
some
that.
absurd stat of how few points the Red Bulls got down the stretch to win MLS Cup over all of these more favorite and more favored and more successful teams. And if you do not like this current playoff format that we have for ourselves, nothing will get that to change faster than a team that is a 7th place team somehow getting hot for just this very short amount of time and winning MLS Cup. So if you are the type of person that thinks we're giving the star away for the wrong trophy, then a New York Red Bull win here helps your case and will almost certainly, I would bet, lead to substantive changes to the MLS Cup presented by Audi, as discussed by the postcast presented by Gold Star, playoffs in the 2025 or ahead of the 2025 season. That's number one. Number two.
Oh, sorry, Chief, real quick.
Yeah.
3 of the last 20. They won 3 of their last 20 MLS matches going into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's absurd. And what that proves is that would prove a Red Bull win here would prove that it is a Mickey Mouse trophy. It is a Mickey Mouse Cup, and it should not be seriously considered anything more than an interesting postseason tournament that you can, list on your club accolades, but that the Supporters Shield in Miami truly was the better team this year. You won't be able to make that argument as cleanly with LA, who finished tied for the top of the Western Conference, and I think 4th overall on points. You can make a better argument that they represent excellence this year versus the Red Bulls, where you will be laughed out of a room if you suggest that the Red Bulls were an excellent team during this season. Number 2, if you're a fan of MLS history, and you should be a fan of MLS history, I think that we should I want to, when we have time, or if we ever, get more time, dive into a little bit more of MLS history on this podcast. The New York Red Bulls, originally the New York, New Jersey Metro Stars, the only team other than the Dallas Burn, I believe, now FC Dallas, to not have won MLS Cup. So it would be another one of the original teams winning an MLS Cup. I think that's kind of cool. I understand Grayson's point about not wanting to see other teams win. It is kind of neat when original
MLS... don't be responding to me yet.
Okay. I do like the fact that when, original teams win MLS Cup. So I do.
Chief, I helped your argument before. I will hurt your argument now. New England Revolution have also not won a cup.
Fair enough. Whatever. Plus, them winning a cup, we're already New York teams already win. If I have to pick one of the 2 New York teams to have more cups, I would much rather have the Red Bull have more cups than the true soulless, evil football empire of City Football Group. 4th point, I've said this before, I will say it again here, is that the way the Red Bulls behaved after the U.S. Open Cup loss in 2017, when they beat us here in Cincinnati and crushed our dreams, was one of the classiest moments I have ever seen on a sporting event. Like if you could make the exact opposite of how Ohio State and Michigan ended, it would be in that moment where their players showed appreciation to the environment. They made nothing but positive comments about the city, the team. Their players were openly advocating for MLS to come to Cincinnati. I think that's kind of cool. I think there's kind of a shared history between these 2 clubs and these 2 cities, a friendly rivalry, so to speak, the blood feud, if you will. I would be okay, and I would be more okay with the Red Bulls winning than LA. So there's my opening pitch to you.
I like it. So, Grayson, by the rules you've set up, do you now attack his points?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have 2. I just have 2 quick points in response. One, as far as the Red Bulls winning MLS Cup, devaluing MLS Cup, lower seeded teams have won MLS Cup plenty of times. It still is viewed as the primary trophy. On the other hand, Red Bull fans and players are all, on the pro Shield side. Like they're currently our allies. Like Sasha Cluston, Dax Picardi, these are players who routinely talk about how important the Shield is. The second Red Bulls win the MLS Cup, they're going to drop that. And then the second point is, Red Bull were nice to us, but then they tampered with Frankie.
And paid.
Who, by the way, I don't know, may get an MLS Cup ring if they win. I don't know how Red Bull are gonna dole those out. I certainly don't want him to get one. And then also, as far as Red Bull, being nice to us when we were in USL, don't forget how instrumental Red Bull were in ruining our playoff chances last year. With the whole Matt Miazga situation and how they comport themselves all the time when they play. And if Red Bull weren't being Red Bull, that game would have ended up differently, and Matt Miazga would have been available for the rest of the playoffs, and we would already have a star above our badge. So as far as I'm concerned, anything that we might have owed them from the USL years, anything that they might have, given us, that's been repaid. It's back to even. And that's it. So
immediately you lose this debate because one of your rebuttal points right here is just flat out incorrect. That you are incorrectly assigning blame for the Matt Miazga situation to the New York Red Bulls for what happened. And that's wrong. All of the blame falls onto the terrorist organization known as pro referees. There was nothing that any Red Bull player did to make Matt Miazga unavailable for that match. It was the incredibly thin-skinned officiating crew that somehow decided making a heart hand sign at the fans was worthy of a card, which led to Matt Miazga having to go into the locker room to demand an explanation from these losers who then fabricated a story designed to get Matt Miazga suspended. When that didn't happen, decided to take their case to the court of public opinion to force the issue with MLS. At no point in this chain of events was a member of Red Bull staff, Red Bull players, or anyone associated with the Red Bulls actively involved in Matt Miazga receiving a suspension. By blaming the Red Bulls for this, you are giving cover to the terrorists. You are giving aid and comfort to the terrorists. And my friend, that makes you a terrorist yourself under the Patriot Act. And I'm not going to stand for doing a podcast with a terrorist. As to your other points that you made, everybody knows this. You've got to pick a side. We've known this since 90s rap, East Coast, West Coast. I'm an East Coast person. I support the East Coast. I stand the Wu-Tang Clan. They're from Staten Island. That's part of the 5 boroughs, New York.
Which borough is Harrison in?
It's the 6th borough. Everybody
knows Jersey.
Everybody knows Jersey's the 6th borough. Brick City, baby. So no, I'm an East Coast person. I want the East Coast. I want the East Coast to succeed. I don't like West Coast people. I think that the West Coast is soft. I don't like the West Coast being involved in our sports leagues. It screws up time for everything. They play too late. West Coast culture is an abomination. I ride East Coast hardcore. So this whole idea of conference thing, that moves me not in this entire debate. And as to the idea of how to build a team, there will be nothing learned about this win from the Red Bulls versus team building or anything like that, because there's absolutely no one that is going to go out there to seek to replicate the winning strategy of losing 17 of your last 20 games, limping into the playoffs and getting hot at the last minute. Nothing about this is repeatable. In fact, all it is an indictment of the playoff system, that this is so stupid that it allows this to happen. And yes, we should be rooting for the stupidity of this playoff format to be exposed. We should be rooting for that as well. And you know what? As to LA winning a lot, yeah, fuck LA. They're close to San Diego, so they've got to deal with that too.
May I interject some spice into this? I'll give you guys each
one second.
Yeah, please.
As far as nobody's going to use this as an excuse or whatever, we already saw Chris Albright. We talked about like whether they can still win MLS Cup. He said plenty of teams come in here and they're not favored and they win, and that was his entire argument for why they still might have a chance.
What else was he going to say this year? This team sucked at the end of the year.
Fair enough. All right. I'm going to give you guys a surprise round here. It's called Defend Your Left Back. I need you to defend me having to root for the left back of your team. Chief, John Tolkien. Why should I be rooting for John Tolkien?
Okay. You should be rooting for John Tolkien, because if John Tolkien's style of play is legitimized, then we can be even more aggrieved when the same benefit of the doubt is not given to Matt Miazga, is not given to any number of the trolls we employ on this team right now. You want Lucho Acosta back? Lucho Acosta is one of the biggest trolls in the history of the sport. And John Tolkien winning a ring will be argument for us to feel aggrieved and be mad that why does he get cards? Why does Miazga get cards when this loser over on the Red Bulls continues to get away with? He can't keep getting away with this. Number two,
I like it.
If they win, it increases the likelihood somebody buys them from another league. Because, you know, we all know that the only MLS game that any of these people watch is the MLS Cup, probably. And maybe some team over in Europe with an American owner is like, I like the cut of that guy's jib, and John Tolkien is removed from us. But they have to be on the biggest stage. They have to win on the biggest stage for that to happen.
Those are compelling arguments. I like being pro assholes because
we
our
are
team
assholes.
Has a lot of assholes on it. Grayson, Johnny Nelson, one John Nelson, problematic liker of tweets. Defend John Nelson.
Yeah, so you want to call him a problematic liker of tweets?
I do.
He's liked a few of my tweets. So
that's not helping your case.
It's a positive. Second of all, you want to talk about like supporting assholes, right there with you. You know, and I think he's clearly, you know, he and his the way he views things, it's on the rise. Sometimes you got to hitch your wagon to a winning horse. But most importantly, he is a member of the FC Cincinnati family. It wasn't a you know, he was a good soldier. He always put in a shift. It wasn't like a bad breakup. You know, I think by all accounts he would have been back in 2023, except for St. Louis picked him in the expansion draft. That's not his fault. That's not our fault. So, you know, I always wish the former players the best, especially, you know, if they didn't burn any bridges, right?
Yeah.
He's an Ohio guy. He was very excited. He was very excited to join the team. I think by all accounts would have loved to stick around. So, you know, I wish him the best.
So do we move on to closing arguments now?
Well, hang on. I just wanted to say it's really funny to think about a relationship ending via expansion draft.
So Grayson's waving his closing argument. This is my.
Well, you could go first. And
here's my closing argument. I'm going to keep it brief. What better outcome to MLS Cup would there be than the New York Red Bulls having gotten better since losing Frankie Amaya? And what would that do for Frankie Amaya? How would he be feeling to watch the team that he left do better in his absence? That would bring me joy. That would bring me just the smallest amount of joy if this makes Frankie upset.
I prefer Frankie the fire salamander. Grayson, final thoughts here. Closing argument.
Well, Frankie seems to still be supporting his team through the playoffs on social media. I assume. I haven't checked. I just figured I'd put that out there.
If he isn't, he's an asshole, and that's funny too.
But you know, I think more importantly, I think the story of the Red Bull season has been about family, but mostly not about, you know, family values, but you know, really lack of family values, breaking up families. And, you know, I feel like in this day and age, we need to be promoting marriage, you know, promoting fathers staying around their kids. And I think that it would be very important that people learn that if you leave your family and move to New York, that's not something that you should do.
In a way, Forsberg's relationship was ended via expansion draft. So there you go. Well, it's all kicking off on December 7th at 4 p.m. That's sweet time spot. So tune in or don't. That's fine. You probably already have the means to watch it. So probably isn't anything else going on. So there you go. Let us know wherever you post things who you're rooting for. I want to know if Chief or Grayson convinced you to switch who you were maybe pulling for going into this one.
Yeah, actually, we should make that our gold star shining
Yes,
moment later on in the week. Who are you rooting for and why? We'll put a tweet up and you can respond to that on various social media platforms.
Yes, I think that's a really good idea. All right, that ends our MLS discussion. Ew, gross. Let's go talk some Patreon questions, and then let's get out of here. All right, we are back, and to wrap us up, we have the November questions from the Patreon, which, sure, it's December, but there was a holiday episode in there. Hopefully people enjoyed that. If you didn't listen to it, it's fairly evergreen. Go back and listen. It was fun to put together. But in the meantime, we got questions from the Patreon. You too can pay us a couple of bucks a month, and I do mean literally a couple of bucks. It is $2 a month. Help keep the show afloat, and you get to ask a question that we read on air. I'm going to say air, even though there's in no way, shape, or form this show being broadcast. But we'll answer it on air, and some folks that ask some really good questions here. This one is very pertinent to what we've already talked about. I'm going to touch on a couple of these. Key asks us this one. Pat Brennan's article about the process of signing Denke was incredible, but there was a section where the exec from Cercle Bruges, I'm not looking up that spelling, hey, you almost nailed it, mentions how impressed he was with the crowd and stadium atmosphere. At what point do these comments start to sound patronizing? We've been doing this shit since 2016. I will say, Key, I think generally a fair point when referring to American or US-based media. Cercle Bruges averages 4,000 fans a home match. The biggest club in Belgium by average attendance is their crosstown rivals in Bruges, and they average 22,000. FC Cincinnati put 26,000 or 25,000 people in the building for that one. He literally doesn't see crowds that big that often. He was genuinely impressed.
Yeah. And as far as it being patronizing, I would just refer back to my comments earlier about joining MLS quote versus joining FC Cincinnati. Like it takes a long time for reputations to change. And so whatever people in Europe, especially teams like Cercle Bruges, who were not transferring players with MLS very often, they're going to have an idea about American soccer. There's no reason in particular to think that Cercle Bruges' CEO had a very good idea about what's going on in Cincinnati specifically beyond what he thinks about MLS generally. So I would just take it as a compliment.
Yeah. The other thing too is that you got to remember that it's not patronizing. A lot of these people, if they don't follow MLS a lot, or they only consume the MLS product on television, going to an actual game probably does change some perceptions of what American soccer culture is like in terms of what it's like here in Cincinnati. And I think that that's probably where I think that was the gist of the comment, was that, oh, we know that you guys draw well because we see that on the numbers that we look at about how many, because they know this sort of stuff, because that all informs how much they can ask for in terms of money. They do all that research. They would have already known, oh, they average 25,000 fans a game. But if the perception is, and sounds like it is, that it's 25,000 American spectators, not 25,000 quote unquote ultras or people that are actively involved in the, noise making endeavor. You show up and you see the Bailey, maybe changes a perception or two about like what soccer culture is like in America.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially where the most likely, I don't know, exposure to sports, American sports they would have received would have been the NFL or the NBA, which I think are
sterile,
terrible fan environments.
Yeah, it's the NBA is they're playing like they're playing music without the lyrics during the actual in possession of the ball, and the most crowd participation you get is a defense chant every so often.
Yeah, right. And the NFL in-person experience is notoriously awful, I think. So yeah, Key, don't be too upset. I think it sometimes too, it goes back to the idea that like Europe as a monolith is very different in that the clubs in Belgium, the clubs in Denmark, the clubs in Switzerland are way smaller than I think we would expect them to be, especially in terms of fan participation or attendance. Okay. Drew asks, do you think Acosta said he wants to leave to avoid discussing the first round exit, similar to how LeBron has mentioned retirement to avoid talking about being swept in the Western Conference Finals in 2023? Is there any idea that this was let's not talk about the failure that this year was. Let's sprinkle a little chaos.
But I always appreciate LeBron taking a stray for always finding a way to avoid talking about LeBron's failures. So job well done on the question format.
This is pretty good. Any thought, Grayson? I don't want to not let you have an opportunity.
I mean, I still think that a lot of the specific reaction was him being emotional, and like the specific things he said were, I don't want to say nonsense, but like really nothing to do with anything.
Easily debunkable.
It was just stuff you say.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think he was emotional in the moment. That doesn't mean that he wasn't also, looking for
thinking these things. Yeah. So there you go, Drew. I wish we had better news for you, assuming based on your question there that you want Lucha to stay. Now I'll get to Harrison Hensley's lovely question, who asks, what would be on a perfect Cincinnati bachelor party weekend itinerary? Let's assume that there's a Saturday FC Cincinnati home match as a part of it. Feel free to be specific on how you'd approach the match even. This is a good question. So I think we should build this around an FC Cincinnati Saturday home match. That's a 7:30 kickoff.
I mean, you clearly go to Streetside to watch a little Premier League action with the Fulham supporters, have some incredible Streetside beer. Then after the match is over, you're going to want to get, dressed out for your FC Cincinnati game. So you go to Cincy Shirts, do some print on demand shirts at both locations. Use the promo code, the Postcast, to get discounts on your purchases. You change into your new shirts. You go down to Gold Star and get yourself some lunch. One of their fine Cincinnati locations. You enjoy yourself some Gold Star. Then you get downtown. And I would just bar hop between the various supporters bars. I would check out all of them. I would check out all the various locations, Holiday Spirits, the Symphony Hotel, the Stillhouse, Northern Row, all the places that the supporters meet, get a drink in each one, make the march to the match, go to the match. And if you're still functional after that, go find some place that you can, chill out and have like a come down cocktail a little bit, someplace that's a little bit more neighborhood friendly, maybe something like, like Milton's up and over the Rhine. That's not over the Rhine. Is that Prospect Hill right there?
Yeah. Prospect Hill, Mount Auburn.
Yeah. Mount Auburn. Go to Milton's maybe, or, bounce across the river to Covington and hit one of the dive bars over there that are always good. Yeah, that's how I think that I can't think of a better way to spend your Cincinnati morning, afternoon, pregame, and night.
So here's a couple of tweaks. It's not really different. They're really different. But yeah, seconded doing starting off early with the Premier League games at Street Side. And you gotta have a full day, right? Absolutely pay attention to lunch, right? Can't recommend Gold Star enough, but you gotta definitely make sure that you are filling yourself up.
Yes,
you need a base,
right?
Yeah,
like
don't count on food happening.
Girl.
Like plan. Don't be like, oh, we'll just grab something as we go along. Have a spot planned for lunch. The game can be dinner, but you have to commit to eating at the game. Don't be like, we'll drink our dinner. You're not going to make it out late doing that.
An issue with the FC Cincinnati game is it does make it tough to have like a steak dinner, which is kind of the classic bachelor party move. So if you want to move that to like a steak lunch, that's also acceptable. But I'm not going to argue against Gold Star. All right.
Thank you. How do you feel about pitch view seats for?
Well, so we'll get
like
that. We'll get there. We'll get there because I have thoughts about that.
Okay.
So as far as the bars, you got to stick to your big spots, I think. So like Rheingeist probably going to be able to accommodate your bachelor party pretty well. Sam Adams is going to be able to accommodate your bachelor party pretty well. If it's a nice day and you can take advantage of the outside, Northern Row is going to be a good option. Holiday Spirit's probably going to be a good option. Queen City Radio has a big outdoor spot.
Yep.
I think those are like kind of your around the stadium options. Do not bring your bachelor party to Longfellow. I don't want to see you.
Okay. And don't ask to put the Indiana game on.
Oh, heavens no.
They don't have TVs. And as for your tickets for the game, I understand people's situations are very different, but if you can swing it, and I think for a bachelor party it's worth it, get yourself into one of the all-inclusive club situations.
Yeah.
Pitch view is probably within reach. If you can pull strings or get a hold of somebody and get into like the Legends Club or the P&G Club, which has like champagne on the walls, I hear.
Wow.
Like I cannot say enough how important it is for your bachelor party to get yourselves into one of those all-inclusive situations, not just because of all the drink options, but because once again, you can hit up that buffet.
Right. The buffet is a huge
because
part of that.
You have to eat.
Yeah.
Like I'm not kidding. You have to eat the day of your bachelor party. And then afterwards, if you can make a reservation at Ghost Baby, that is something I would recommend for sure. It's a nice low key spot to chill. And if you guys are still kicking, it's not my spot, but the casino.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah.
Because you can hang there late.
Yeah. Get yourself some cash, find the dice table, stick to the pass line. You'll have a good time the entire time. If you don't know how to play the dice table, learn, because as a gentleman about to embark on the quest of marriage, you should know how to shoot dice. That's just, don't ask me why, it's important.
I'll say this, like it is totally reasonable to expect your boys to stake you for a bit at the casino. But if you start to really feel yourself, don't be offended if they're like, all right, well, now you're on your own.
Or
because like there are limits.
Right. And also don't be afraid that when you go to the casino, you've got to make peace with the fact that it's going to be like the end of Ocean's 11, where they're all at the fountain at the Bellagio and they all leave one at a time. Like, there will be people that want to stay later at the casino because they're riding it or they're down and they need to get back up. There will be people that are, wanting to get out of there, that I'm good for a couple of drinks, a couple of hands of blackjack, or a couple pulls on the old one-armed bandit, and then I'm out. So you just got to be comfortable with the fact that if you're going to end your night at the casino, everyone's not going home together. So plan ahead, plan accordingly, and don't plan to be splitting that last Uber ride with everybody together back to the Airbnb or whatever it is you're renting at. Also, this is a great just life tip as well. Whatever you do, if you're going to, go the Airbnb route, do yourself a favor. As soon as you check into the Airbnb, put in a delivery order, a grocery delivery order for Gatorade, snacks, and extra beer. so that when you come back at the end of the night, no matter what you're in the mood for, you've already got that sitting there and you're not living at the whim of a DoorDash driver or what's open. If you are going to be staying in a hotel, insist that you're staying at a hotel with a hotel bar. Do not cheap out and stay at a hotel without a hotel bar, because the hotel bar beer at the end of the night is an elite beer.
And I'll add this. If you're staying in an Airbnb and you're stocking it with snacks and drinks and whatever, I would say stick to beer. Like your eyes are gonna get big and you're gonna be like, well, we'll buy a bottle of Bullet.
No,
we'll buy some gin.
Right.
We'll buy some vodka.
Drinking beer.
If you're rolling into the Airbnb at like 2 a.m. If you guys really want to like stay up and play video games or chat or bare your souls to each other or talk about how lives, you're always going to be around, even though things change. You're going to want to have beer,
right? And
probably like a light beer or low ABV beer.
Yeah. Get some
so you can just kind of
Montuckies or hams or something like that.
Yes.
Get some hammers there.
There you go.
Look at us.
Yeah, that's a good time.
Planning out a weekend.
That's a good time. And I would just echo the pitch view as well. This is, from the sounds of it, a very cheap bachelor party. That's where you can spend a couple bucks. That absolutely worth it.
Especially if you're not doing the steak dinner, because if you're going to do a steak dinner, if you're doing a steak dinner right, you're already looking at about 120 bucks a head. For another like, $80, like 200, you can usually get yourself into the pitch view.
And don't feel like all the seats need to be together. If you can get like little clusters of people here and there, because you'll spend a lot of the time at the free bar, the free buffet, up on the patio.
Up on the patio rail. There's like seating up there. You'll be standing a lot. Yeah, do that.
And if you guys aren't going to drink early, it is fun to go with your boys to the to the gun range.
That quickly turned from driving to gun. I liked it. That's
a fun way to start the day. But it also is, you could also go golfing in the morning as well if you don't want to drink early, or if you want to, have some seltzers or something on the course. That's nice.
But don't try to finish the night at the gun range after you've been drinking all day.
Absolutely.
That's a bad idea.
No. Do not go to the gun range after you've had any drinks, please. Also, one way to rationalize spending the money on the Pitchview Club is that if you go to other cities for bachelor parties, there are like kind of different kind of alternative establishments and entertainment options that are available to you.
Yes.
That aren't available in Cincinnati, and those places tend to cost a lot of money. So if you're doing it in Cincinnati, or at least it doesn't say cost a lot of money, they do induce you to spend a lot of money. If you're not going out of town, you can kind of like, funnel that cash over into your pitch view experience.
Right. You can thank the lovely people who wrote Cincinnati's city charter for that. So,
well, I'll tell you one thing that would really help this bachelor party is a Subway. And Comrade Lycan asks, question mainly for Chief, but Kevin and Grayson are more than welcome to add in. Thank you, Comrade. What naming scheme would you choose for the subway lines and stops in Cincinnati? And could we get some examples?
Number one, if it were me, if there is any wealthy philanthropist that wants to donate a lot of money to make this happen, you can have a line named after yourself. We'll name it after your family. We'll name it after your charity of choice. Like if there's, in the Chris Nolan Batman verse, the Bruce Wayne built the elevated train in Gotham, or not Bruce Wayne, Thomas Wayne built the elevated train in Gotham. If there's a Thomas Wayne lurking around in Cincinnati, for the love of God, stay alive. But number two, donate your money and we'll name that. We'll name anything after you. We'll name stations. We'll name actual lines of the subway after you. I'm cool with that. Barring that, I think that you choose to emulate what I believe to be the best subway system in the United States, and that is the DC Metro, and just go colors and streets. Couldn't be any easier.
I like colors and streets. Because I assume this won't have a lot of lines per se. You know, this is not going to be a 27 line city. Maybe one day, and we'll have to change all of this. Maybe one day. But I think it would be really funny to have a beer line, a chili line, a ghetto line. You could have a couple of these. and the color could be corresponding, you know, yellow, brown, orange. They're all very similar colors, but
whatever gets it built is the answer to that question.
Yes. Yeah, underrated aspect of that, Chief, is the obviously the government is usually the one buying up the properties and using the right of eminent domain and doing all these fun things. Having wealthy people buy up the associated land and then handing it over to the government feels like pretty good cheat code to getting around a lot of those red tapes. So
let's do it. I'm into it.
Help a brother out.
Yeah.
B Grub asks, now that it's the off season, I will be filling my time with the EPL, D&D, and avoiding CNN. What are some other acronyms that are worth my time? It's a very fun question.
Ooh. PS5.
PS5 is a good one.
I've been hitting that up a lot. Many people have noted, perhaps on Twitter, that the adventures of Piazga have resumed under another acronym, BG3. So,
how is Piazga doing, by the way? Where does Piazga stand in your universe?
He is currently trying to find his way through the world because this game has one of the worst tutorial and hand-holding systems I have ever seen in my life. He just vanquished a bunch of spiders in a well. That was very exciting.
Good.
So yeah, we're moving on. So I that would be the two I would start with. ABV, a lot of that helps as well. Winter is good Scotch season, so it's always a good time to break out a bottle of Scotch and move your way forward and sort of. I think of it as time traveling. That like I make sort of days and evenings disappear by consuming THC, another acronym as well that's also been very helpful in this space since they've legalized it. Try that out a little bit. Yeah, that's what's getting me through right now. I don't know. What about you, Grayson?
I like it.
I don't have any good acronyms. I'm sorry.
Oh,
no.
CVG.
Yeah.
Just
go someplace else.
Travel.
Yeah, TSA.
I like it. I've actually started writing this. I started writing it for my mother-in-law, and because I was putting it together for her, I may just go ahead and publish it on the website. But RSS feeds. I've sung their praises in the past. I want to put together a proper how to use RSS feeds, how to utilize an RSS reader. It's a good alternative, I would say, to a lot of social media. So get nerdy into that.
YMCA. Get to the gym here and there.
That's good.
GTL, Gym Tan Laundry. For those of you that remember when MTV used to have actual shows on.
That and fist pumping. All right.
Yeah.
We can bring it back. I like it. David Ziegler asks, to bring us back to soccer for a moment, if you could change one in-game moment in FC Cincinnati's history, what would it be? And he gives a couple of examples, like a goal gets scored instead of missed or saved, or a goal is saved, a player doesn't get a card, a specific pass is made, etc. You get to change one in-game moment in FC Cincinnati's history.
Columbus Crew doesn't score that second goal to send us to overtime in the Eastern Conference Final.
Feels like a good one.
Matt Miazga doesn't throw up the hard hands, or they don't give him a yellow card right there. I feel like that changes the course of history significantly.
That Miami equalizer in regulation during the Open Cup comes to mind as well.
Can I force something to happen? Like Jeff Birding hires a GM a little quicker?
Maybe.
I mean, it's got to be Crew doesn't score the second goal.
Yeah.
But I would also go with Messi is not in the lineup in the U.S. Open Cup semifinal.
Yeah, that would help.
Bradley Wright Phillips not existing would probably also help a little bit.
Just not being in the game that day.
Yeah, just no, I'm going to race for existence.
But that just means Red Bull brought in a bigger name that time, and we weren't even close in that game.
Right.
Have you ever see that movie Yesterday where they erased the Beatles from existence? And he's like the only guy who remembers the Beatles. It's so funny because like literally the only thing that's different is Oasis doesn't exist.
Damn. On a similar note, we have a question from the Post's own Damon Gumbert, who asks, what is the widest band in the world and why is it Matchbox 20?
The whitest band in the world?
The widest band in the world.
I heard widest, like width.
Width? Yeah, that made me think.
I was like, probably Blues Traveler?
I was going to say Blues Traveler.
Counting Crows, maybe? I don't know. Or the Terror Squad with Big Punisher.
There's a couple of metal bands that can get pretty big.
Yeah, ICP feels really white. The Dead?
I was going to say, there's some jam bands that don't scream ethnic minorities.
Right. See, I'd go with Fish.
Yeah,
I feel like the Dead are just like big enough to have broader appeal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really love the tenor of the question, to be honest.
Matchbox 20 is a really good answer. Matchbox 20 is a really good answer.
Matchbox 20 is a good answer.
That genre of like bare naked ladies,
what about My Chemical Romance? That has to be like a super winner in this space.
Are we allowed to talk about My Chemical Romance right now?
What happened to them?
Didn't
their drummer died? Their former drummer died. I think they'd already replaced him.
Didn't they just have a death in the family?
I don't know.
They did.
Oh,
they did.
But
they've been in the zeitgeist recently. I don't know what's up, but
band. I'll go with the Eagles.
The Eagles is good. I'll go with Little Feet. There you go.
No. You know the real answer? The real answer is Steely Dan. Final answer.
I was about to say Steely Dan. And I switched to Little Feet, which, if you're not familiar, very similar bands.
Just go all day. You were thinking jam bands. The real answer was yacht rock the entire time.
Of course it was.
Steely Dan is your friend's dad's favorite band. Like that's like that's what they are.
Yeah. Jay
Don't Google what the name is from.
Ooh, now I'm curious.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Jay Walbrink asks a very, very pertinent question. When is it appropriate to put up and turn on Christmas lights / outdoor decorations? When do you start listening to Christmas music? I have thoughts on this. Do either of you have thoughts on this?
I'll tell you.
Whenever you need it.
Yes. 100%.
I like that.
There's so much shit going on, man.
Whenever you need it.
I'm not going to tell people that it's too early to put up your Christmas decorations or to listen to Christmas music. Whatever gets you through it.
I will say this: most Christmas music, unfortunately, is just the artist was like contractually required to release a Christmas song, and most of it is kind of trash. So, but if you love it and it brings you joy, do it.
Have you heard the Rob Thomas Christmas song, like Christmas in a Small Town or whatever?
Try that in a small town.
A fight song to Saint Nick.
Try Christmas in a small town.
I do like the Sia Christmas album.
Sia Christmas is very good. Snowman is a very good song.
If you get Kelly Clarkson on a Christmas song, that's pretty good.
Mrs. Chief is a huge fan of the CeeLo Green and the Muppets Christmas album.
CeeLo Green has a fantastic Christmas album.
You know what? You want to put puppets or comic or cartoon characters on a Christmas album.
Now it's time.
It's usually pretty good.
Yeah, bangers. Alvin and the Chipmunks Christmas banger.
K-pop has some good Christmas songs.
Of course.
I don't know what they're saying, but it sounds great.
Yeah.
If you have to have a
DMX's
rule,
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer always plays. Rest in peace to Earl Simmons.
Backdoor Santa by various artists, but I want to say Jimmy Butler is the definitive there. If you need a rule, though, if you need a time frame, because I would agree in general, if you need it, go for it. I do think Christmas music is allowed to spill into Thanksgiving. I think that's fair. Yes, Grayson.
I was going to say, but if you need a rule, remember, this is a rule to govern yourself, not to govern other people.
Yes. I always say day after Thanksgiving is the perfect time to do the whole decorating shebang. You typically have that Friday off, not always, but you typically have that Friday off. It's a good time to knock it all out right there. And I say, go for it. Day after Thanksgiving, we're on to Christmas, baby. But I do try to say, respect Thanksgiving. Chief, you can plug your ears for this. Respect Thanksgiving. Don't turn on the holiday decorations before Thanksgiving. Let it exist on its own.
No. Christmas. The best time to decorate for Christmas is before Thanksgiving. So that you're already thinking about the better holiday.
We have a house.
Thanksgiving is an obligation. Christmas is a celebration.
Damn. We have a house in our neighborhood that every year for Halloween has their house dress up like Christmas. And then they just keep it up.
I love that. That's joyous.
They dress up like Santa and they hand out candy as Santa and they start Christmas on Halloween. It's very funny.
Into it.
Put up the stuff while it is still warm. Okay, last one that I'm going to get to. There's still a couple out there, but this has gone on long enough. So let me make sure. Wow, my mouse is going all over the place. Last one here. I definitely want to knock this one out. This comes from Ian Rexroad. And this is going to require some thinking, but it's a good question when you get your mind all the way around it. If I could guarantee you exactly 60 points in a run of consecutive regular season games, but 0 points in all other games that season. That means you're comfortably in the playoffs, but you get 60 points straight and nothing else outside of those 60 points that you get straight. Would you rather it be at the start of the season, the middle of the season, or the end of the season?
Do I know that the 60 points are coming?
Let's assume you sign up for it and there is a magic spell put on you. You have no memory of having made this deal.
So is there a chance I'm accidentally firing my coach if I don't start off with the wins immediately?
Point. Yes, the deal is only between you and Ian, who I'm imagining is a wizard in this situation. So yes.
So how many games would you be losing?
So here's something to throw out, right?
That's a good question. I haven't done that math.
Check my math on this. I just did it.
Okay.
I believe you can go undefeated and have exactly 60 points.
Ooh.
I think if you win 13 games, it's 34 game season, right?
34 game season, yeah.
If you win 13, that's 39 points.
Right.
Right? You have 21 games left.
And you draw the other 21.
1 point per game. Draw the other 21.
Is that better though?
So
that's a lot of draws in a year.
No, but you just sprinkle in the wins, right? So it just happens.
But
so
would you be okay with 21 draws if it meant you were undefeated?
Sure.
Right.
Versus a 20-game win streak.
Could you? All right. So if you're drawing 21 games, that raises the possibility that you might go like 8 games in a row drawing.
I think you kind of have to.
Could you deal with that? Like if you didn't, could you deal with 8 draws in a row without the foreknowledge?
Didn't we do that in like 22?
we had a lot of draws in 22. I think we had more draws than wins or losses. Like, of the 3 outcomes, it was our most common one.
If you drew 21 games in a row, like, what would the reaction be around a fan base? Like, you can't be mad.
Let's assume there's at least some goals being scored, right? Like, a 2-2 draw feels very different than 21 0-0 draws.
All right, so hold on.
Okay,
what if you won
22,
hold on.
Oh, yeah. Please give us the historical.
Yeah.
In 22, the most that we drew in a row was 4.
Okay.
But we did have a stretch where we went 7 games with 6 draws and 1 loss.
Oh,
Can you imagine though
fun.
can you imagine if you won the first 13 right out of the chute and you drew the last 21? Like, at what point would you be like, well, I mean, we haven't lost, and theoretically the unblemished season is still in play.
There is something really appealing about having a Invincibles season, but I think it'd be really funny to be invincible and finish like 5th in the conference.
It would just be an absurd season. I think I would hate it. And then only when it finished would I be like, oh wait, that was actually kind of cool.
Right.
So if you lose 4 in a row,
okay,
and you win 15 games and draw 15 games, that's also 60 points.
Okay.
So you can lose the first 4 and just sprinkle in a bunch of wins and draws.
Actually, you could do it better. You lose the first
win and
2,
draw every other game.
lose the first 2, lose the last 2.
You don't want to back into the playoffs ever. You want momentum going into the playoffs.
Right.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, I sign me up for the 21 draws in a year. Like, I'm into it. Fuck it. That sounds like fun.
I like the idea of losing however many straight and then rattling off, what is that, 14 straight, and then winning 20 straight.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that. Like, you imagine you'd fire the manager at 10.
I know, but that's the great thing. That means whoever you've brought on.
No. It doesn't mean anything because you've already made the deal with the genie. It's not the manager's. The manager isn't doing this. You're getting rid of a good manager, and the guy you hire is, he might be
untested.
a bum.
Yeah, right.
He's just winning because the genie's letting him win.
Damn, that's a good point. Okay, I was thinking I was guaranteeing my next man up being incredible, but yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Ian, great question. I really like that.
21 draws. We need to remember this for our season preview when they release the schedule. We need to predict 21 draws. Where are the 21 draws coming from?
The Wizard season where we have to put the 60 points straight. Well, there we go. We have a couple of questions that'll go unanswered. I'll get the December post up here in just a moment. But thank you to each and every one of you for, again, spending your hard-earned money and asking us questions. Those were very fun. And with that, Chief, it's a 2-hour off-season episode. Not too bad.
We're truly in the off-season now. It truly is a great day because we're past the foolishness of Thanksgiving. But anyway, go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast. It is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com or just click a link in the description to check out some of our written work. It also has links to our social media accounts across all sorts of different platforms, including YouTube, where we are trying to do more and more video content. Please, dare I say it, like and subscribe and leave a comment. But no, that would be really, really helpful. I also want to give a thank you to Jim Trace and the Makers. They're a local Cincinnati band who provided all of the music for this episode. We love having them on board. You can check them out. Again, link in the description of this episode to find out where they might be playing shows next, or where you can listen to more of their music. Also want to give a massive, massive thank you to the awesome and very attractive patrons over on Patreon. It is a voluntary subscription that people take out with no real promise of anything extra that keep this show afloat. And we are so, so thankful to those of you that have decided to take that commitment. If you do like the show, or at least just want to engage with other people who have listened to the show and want to talk about FC Cincinnati, MLS, soccer, or really anything else, you can go on over to Discord. Again, link in the description. Lots of links in the description where you can find a link to the Discord. That's where we are keeping the conversation going 24/7. It feels like it's a really fun group of people in there just talking about FC Cincinnati. And like I said, just about everything else. And finally, I'll say it. If you liked this episode, and given the fact that you've made it all the way to the end, I have to assume you either like it or for some reason cannot reach the stop button. Please share this episode with a friend or family member or someone who likes FC Cincinnati. The best way for us to grow is from a personal recommendation from somebody who likes it. And if that's you, please tell other people. And if you don't have any friends, feel free to give us a review on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. We'll take anything we can get. But again, a huge, huge thank you to everybody for listening to this show. I am blown away that anybody listens to this. So again, I well and truly mean this. Thank you so much for listening.